Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the funniest writer in America, Space Foundation board member, Mr. P.J. O'Rourke.
Thank you. Thank you. But I'm not going to be funny. I'm not going to make any jokes about our corporate partners. Not here at the corporate partnership dinner, because there is a faithful partner is not a joke unless you're my wife and you married one. Now tonight we're here to give praise and thanks to all the companies that support the Space Foundation throughout the year. You make this marriage work, okay? Now look out across this room. Attendance is amazing. I mean, the last time so much of our industry was gathered in one place was when Orville Wright was having lunch with Wilbur. We are very fortunate to have such an amazing and extensive array of friends backing our efforts. Now, in particular, I want to thank Northrop Grumman for co-sponsoring tonight's dinner. Today's great, excellent dinner. And they sponsor the private appreciation ceremony and reception. I also want to thank the El Pomar Foundation for letting us use their beautiful carriage museum for that event, and Intelsat General and Paradigm for co-sponsoring the corporate partnership reception at the Ball Aerospace Exhibit Center. To put this all in Space Foundation terms, we are proud to be in your orbit. Now, in addition, we want to express our thanks to all of our member companies whose financial support, in-kind contributions, and voluntary efforts are essential to the success of the Space Foundation programs. Please give yourself a round of applause. And now give the Space Foundation more money. Elliot slipped that into the script. Now, at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our corporate host for the evening. Please join me in welcoming my fellow Space Foundation board member, Gary Irvin. He is his complicated title. He is the corporate vice president at Northrop Grumman, and he's the president of Northrop Grumman Aerospace Systems. And Aerospace Systems is, as you all know, it's a premier provider of space technology, which does good things for good people, and of manned and unmanned aircraft, which do bad things to bad people. And we thank you for both, Gary. Ladies and gentlemen, Gary W. Irving.
Well, thank you, PJ, for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight among so many friends and fellow aerospace professionals. The National Space Symposium is one of my favorite events of the year. Our location here in the beautiful Broadmoor in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains couldn't be better. I'd like to take a few minutes this evening and reflect upon some of the issues that are facing our industry. At last year's Space Symposium, Northrop Grumman's chairman, CEO, and president, Wes Bush, was the featured industry speaker. Wes acknowledged the outstanding performance of many of our nation's space systems, but he also noted some of the major challenges facing our industry. These include excessively high procurement costs and the industry's failure to consistently meet cost and schedule commitments. Now, a year later, the sense of urgency to address these challenges has only grown. While the prospect of sequestration remains unclear, the trajectory of the budget is not. National security and civilian space budgets will flatten or decline over the next decade. At the same time, threats to our national security have only increased. From the Middle East to the Asian Pacific region, new challenges are evolving. Space remains congested, contested, and competitive. Throughout the space age, our nation has led the world in the development of space technology that gives our warfighters strategic and tactical supremacy. And space systems will remain essential to our national defense. And we face this threat in a tough business environment. We've heard the message from our customers, and it can all be summed up in a couple words: program performance and affordability. We know the need for the lowest cost, technically acceptable solutions will drive many of our decisions. And we realize that programs that are over budget and or failing to meet milestones will face cancellation. And that means that our industry and our customers must develop new and innovative ways to meet these demanding requirements. We must also become better stewards of our nation's resources, tailoring solutions to address mission needs and opening our minds to new options. We must work together to maintain stable requirements and funding, which in turn will help control costs throughout the life of the programs. As the mission needs evolve, so must our systems. We can do this in a disciplined, affordable manner via block upgrades and pre-planned capability insertions. Many of us in this room have made tough decisions to remain competitive in the face of cost pressures that we are facing. And yes, there's more we can do and will do to run our businesses more efficiently. But cost cutting is only one element of a healthy space industry. Ultimately, our greatest assets are our people. Yet the fact is, we face the reality of an aging workforce in an extremely difficult hiring environment for graduates. When many of us began our careers, aerospace was the industry for an engineer just starting out. But in a world of Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, ambitious technical talent has many more options, and oh, by the way, much larger student debt. To win over the next generation, we need to maintain a space industry that is more agile, flexible, financially stable, and exciting enough to attract the best minds to enter and stay in this business. I'm optimistic that we can do it because the thrill of space is in all of our DNA. The desire to explore the expanse beyond our atmosphere is universal. As an example, the Apollo mission transcended national identity. The astronauts were American, as was the flag planted on the lunar surface, but the entire world shared a sense of triumph and achievement. Today, the future path of manned space exploration remains uncertain, but we continue to do great things in space. Some of them are taken for granted because they're accessed so easily by millions today. GPS and Google Earth are the type of space benefits that were once the province of a small number of elite professionals, but are now accessed by millions. Then there are the images acquired by NASA's great telescopes, Chandra, Hubble, Kepler, to name a few. These pictures send chills down the spine of even the most cynical critic of our investment in space. Many of you will know that the work being performed by the Kepler team is complementary to the work being done by a European team using an Earth-based telescope to look for Earth-like planets beyond our solar system. That team recently discovered potentially billions, yes, let me say that again, billions of planets in inhabitable zones in our own galaxy. That reminds us that we have much work to do and new discoveries to make. At Northrop Grumman, we're proud to be part of the team making the NASA James Webb Space Telescope a reality. This remarkable satellite will look back in time just a few 100,000 years after the Big Bang. Like Kepler, it has the potential to complement many other missions. And programs like JWST have benefits that go beyond science. They're magnets for the engineering talent that sustain our industry while being highly visible to the general population whose support is necessary for our continuation of space endeavors. So I'd suggest to any young engineer coming into our business that right now is a very exciting time. True big projects like JWST will become more the exception than the rule, but there's a great opportunity for new blood to still make a big impact. Entrepreneurs in our industry are pushing new business models and technologies. We all understand that innovation is not just about delivering advanced technology at any price. It's about practical and rapid delivery of technology that works and works well. It's about migrating proven technology to new architectures. It's about satellites with radically shorter developmental times. It's about the potential for hosted government and civil payloads. It's about cybersecurity. It's about the integration of space, air, surface, and cyber systems to multiply the effectiveness of all four. Getting to where we must go will not be easy, but I am confident that we're going to get there. When President Kennedy stood before Congress in May 1961 and called for the nation to commit to putting a man on the moon, much of the technology required had not yet been invented, and still we achieved our goal. Now we're an industry built upon a strong technological foundation. All of you here tonight work for organizations with your own success stories and accomplishments, and I salute you and your people for that. Yes, we are sometimes competitors, sometimes teammates, but we are all of one mind when it comes to this. We want to see our endeavors in space continue to inspire and thrive even in these fiscally constrained times. To make it a reality, those of us in industry and government must support risk-taking and out-of-the-box thinking, along with program performance and affordability. All of these and more are essential to the health of our space industry, national security, and pursuit of scientific knowledge in the 21st century. Thank you all very much for being here this evening. Now, I'd like to share a short video that captures some of the issues we face and the optimism we share for the future. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Galaxies, stars, planets are created, evolve, disappear. Space is a place of transformation. The industry is no different. Whether we adapt or not is fundamental to our future and America's. We have no choice but to change the way we do things, because affordability and the 80% solution is not just another catchphrase. So we are moving beyond the status quo. But our business constantly faces tough challenges. It's the nature of what we've always done. It's how we define success. Even in an era of declining budgets, our great strength is the people behind the programs. They know what's at stake for our security and scientific discovery. A trailblazing generation has given us accomplishments almost as spectacular as space itself. And a new generation is ready to make its mark, inspired by different ideas and new ways of doing things, impatient for progress, ready to perform, solving problems based on a new paradigm. Competition is key to future success, and no one person, company, or industry has a monopoly on the human imagination. We must act now, for the one thing we cannot waste is time. In space, time has a whole different meaning. It is the past, it is the present, it is the future. And when we look back billions of years to the beginning with awe and wonder, we realize our few decades of endeavor have just scratched the surface of what we will and can do. Separate the rhetoric from the reality. Times are tough, but we're tougher. So step forward, lead with action, lead with heart. That is our industry. That is America. For those who dream, seek challenges, solve hard problems, and inspire, there will always be space.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Northrop Grumman, for sponsoring our wonderful dinner this evening. I'm a little uncomfortable because I was not supposed to be on the menu tonight, but I'm here for the greatest of reasons, and that's to make a special announcement. This event celebrates the tremendous partnership that we enjoy with all of our corporate members and how that partnership plays out not just at this event, but at all we do throughout the year. Many of you will recall that about a year ago, the Space Foundation acquired a new corporate headquarters here in Colorado Springs. We were able to do that with the support of a number of supporters here in the community, the El Pomar Foundation, the Ackerman Fund, the Anschutz family, State of Colorado, and others who banded together and really helped us to find a very large, fabulous new corporate home that will last us for a long, long time. It's been our dream with this new home to be able to extend our mission to inspire, enable, and propel by opening a visitor center that would appeal to our mission areas of attracting young people, students, teachers, in a great environment where they could learn about space in a hands-on way. And if you think about it, Colorado Springs is probably the biggest space town in the planet that doesn't have some kind of a space museum or space visitors center. And so we've been excited about the possibility of launching that effort. And tonight I'm thrilled to be able to announce a major contribution by one of our corporate members to this effort. Since we're announcing it at this dinner, it will probably be no surprise that this contribution comes from the Northrop Grumman Company. Northrop Grumman informed us today that they will be making a contribution of $375,000 to fund the Northrop Grumman Space Science Learning Center at the Space Foundation Visitors Center. So Northrop Grumman, you have sent us on our way. Thank you so very much. PJ, back to you.
Well, thank you, Northrop Grumman. That's wonderful. It's wonderful. Somewhat less wonderful is the fact we lost our speaker tonight. Many of you know this already, that the NRO director, Bruce Carlson, could not come. He was called to a meeting with the president, and we're told not to worry. Nothing important. Nothing going on, just a photo op. We'll miss Bruce. He knows a lot of things, none of which he can tell us. So we'll have to generate our own ignorance, and so I've been called in to do that. And what I thought I would talk about is what an interesting presidential election season we have been having. Now, the folks at the Space Foundation, they said, now, go easy on the commander-in-chief. You know, jokes about the commander-in-chief make the generals squirm. Well, I'm an old war correspondent. Squirming generals make me very nervous, so I take the point. Now, some of you may consider yourselves to be apolitical, and given the state of American politics lately, apolitical has a nice ring to it. But politics is like gravity. No getting away from it in this solar system. It's fine to be neutral about gravity, or to love it when it keeps a satellite in orbit and hate it when you step on the bathroom scale, but you can't ignore it, you know? The same with politics, especially in the aerospace industry. You know, I mean, if you pretend politics doesn't exist, you're going to wind up on the launch pad with a rocket powered by politicians full of hot air, you know? I mean, let's face it, aerospace industry is a political football. And are you going to be carried across the goal of good national space policy? Are you going to be thrown into the air of legislative uncertainty? Or are you just going to be kicked down the field, you know? So we have to think about politics, and this year politics has been giving us a lot to think about. The president is running for re-election on a platform of raising taxes. I don't like that. Of course, he wants to raise taxes on just the rich, and I do like that. Then I read the fine print. I'm rich. I could have sworn I was broke. got 3 kids I'm putting through school. I got a mortgaged house that's currently worth less than a double wide on a Mississippi floodplain. Then there are the Republicans. Even Democrats are disappointed in the Republican presidential candidates. Seriously, you give Democrats a couple of drinks and they start saying things like, how is it even possible the Republicans can't find somebody to beat a hoop-shooting Jimmy Carter in skinny jeans during a double-dip recession, you know? Random walk through the phone book, should have done it. Stop squirming, General. Now, my take, what happened there was that all the varsity players got food poisoning in the GOP cafeteria. And the Republicans wound up with the equipment manager and the water boy, the drum major, and the cheerleader out on the field there for the championship game against their bitter rival from the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm bummed that Chris Christie didn't run. I had the perfect campaign slogan for him, Fat Chance in 2012. Oh, it was a natural. Now, Chris Christie seems to know what he's doing. Same for Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels, former Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour. They know what they're doing. Bad thought. Maybe being president of the United States right now is something that people who know what they're doing know they don't want to do. You know? Instead, we've got Mitt Romney. There's a little personality problem there. Romney doesn't have one. Bob Dole without the sparkle. Looks like Romney's the nominee. I am a Republican, but I'm not giddy with enthusiasm. Romney's record in Massachusetts kind of indicates that we would get a president who'd do everything President Obama does, but with a more expensive haircut. I'm being unfair. Romney's real problem is that he's a successful businessman. And successful businessmen always think that they can use the secrets of business success to make government successful. Well, wrong. Because what a successful government does is, if it's working, tax it. If it isn't working, bail it out. And if it's just scraping by, drop Barney Frank on it until it screams for help. Yeah. Business is the opposite of politics. I mean, in business, the customer pays you. In politics, you pay the customer. It's called Solyndra, the company that made solar panels in the dark. You know? Business and politics mix like oil and water. Good Republicans don't mix oil and water. They mix gin and vermouth, you know, which maybe Romney should try. Might loosen him up a little bit. It is interesting to me that it took Mitt Romney so long to obscure the rest of the field. Not that some of them needed much obscuring. They were pretty obscure already, except for Sarah Palin. And I'm glad she didn't run, really, because she scares me. She scares me. I've been outdoors. I've seen a mama grizzly. I'm not sure it would fix things if the President of the United States killed and ate Ben Bernanke. You know? As for the rest of the GOP candidates that we had, I hear Donald Trump endorsed Romney because Mitt lost the coin toss with Newt Gingrich to avoid being endorsed by Donald Trump. Herman Cain, he was a fun guy, but the U.S. government is already too much like pizza delivery, making it convenient for the nation to get overpriced goodies that are bad for us. And that 999 tax plan of his, you know, I'm for what I call the 911 tax plan. Call emergency services and tell them there are dangerous lunatics running wild in Congress, you know. Now, Michelle Bachmann, she energized the base. Unfortunately, she energized President Obama's base, which was hating the president until Michelle got into the race. There was Rick Perry. First, people were worried whether America was ready for another cocksure, way too pleased with himself Texan as president. Then people were worried that Rick Perry might actually be George W. Bush with Botox, speech therapy, and a wig. But the speech therapy didn't work. Perry had the debating skills of SpongeBob SquarePants. John Huntsman said, "I speak Chinese," which is what we'll all be doing if the economy doesn't get fixed soon. Rick Santorum was pro-life, unless you're a guy and want to lead that life in a dress. Santorum was strong on the social issues in an election year where there weren't any. Now, yes, some voters think abortion is morally wrong, and yes, some voters worry that gay marriage may undermine the institution of matrimony, but at the moment, they just don't give a damn. I mean, what with men being down in the dumps about not having a job, moping around the house all day, playing Wii in their underwear, and women all weepy and sad about how the hope and change thing didn't work out. I mean, nobody's had any kind of sex since 2009, you know? And Newt Gingrich, incidentally, the only candidate who actually cares about what brings us all together here in this room. Well, Newt has been told by the voters, here's your hat, what's your hurry? You know, I mean, if you watched all the candidate debates, which you didn't do because you're not crazy, you know that Newt is the smartest man in the room, but the 2008 financial crisis scared people about what happens when the smartest men in the room run things. Newt might turn the federal deficit into a collateralized debt obligation. He might package U.S. foreign policy as a credit swap derivative and get a subprime mortgage on the White House. I mean, Newt turned out to be the Lehman Brothers of presidential candidates. Problem with Newt, just has too many ideas. You know, Newt has too many ideas. He has so many ideas his head exploded, and that was back in the 90s. Speaking of exploding heads and being in your 90s, we're all waiting for Ron Paul's skull to crack open and reveal the cyborg robotic circuitry that has been controlling his body for most of the last century. That is when we will hear the announcement to Earthlings that Israel is actually a Klingon battle cruiser parked on the Mediterranean coast. Ron Paul's too libertarian. You know, I think I'm kind of libertarian myself, but he's too libertarian. He's so libertarian. If Ron Paul is elected, you won't just get to do what you want, you will have to do what you want. You know? 2 quarts of butter pecan ice cream and a pack of Marlboros for lunch. You know? But you're asking yourself, what has all this got to do with space other than Ron Paul being from out there somewhere? Well, you know, we had some fun with space policy during the 2012 presidential race so far. Saturday Night Live, The Daily Show, the candidate debates, and other forms of low comedy had us all laughing at Newt Gingrich's proposal for moon statehood. You know, and Ron Paul said, I think we should send some politicians up there. So it'd be a blue state, you know, and there goes Republican control of the Senate. Mitt Romney said, if I had a business executive come to me and say they wanted to spend a few $100 billion to put a colony on the moon, I'd say, you're fired. Well, ha, ha, ha. I mean, a president, a House of Representatives, and a number of wives have tried to fire Newt, and he's still on the job. So, no, that's not going to happen. But fun with space policy really is all we've had. Space has not been an issue in this election, and there are good reasons it ought to be. NASA's cheap. Its budget is $17.7 billion. That's 25.4% of the budget for the Department of Education, which ought to, considering the state of public schools where none of the kids can do that math, give its money to NASA. You know? I tell you, national prestige is important, even if our current political leadership doesn't know it. China knows it. China's trying to become America without democracy. Meanwhile, America's trying to become Greece without the feta cheese calories, you know? We have gained technological advantages from our space program, and it's not just Tang and Teflon, you know? It's satellite radio for listening to Howard Stern, you know? It's GPS telling Mitt Romney how to get to Washington without going by way of the moon, you know? It's that foam that protects the skulls and football helmets and keeps my little linebacker from becoming any dumber than 8-year-olds already are, you know? It's the cordless drill that lets me do all these do-it-yourself projects around the house. It's the scratch-proof sunglasses my wife wears to conceal her eye rolling at the way the bookshelves tilt, you know? The hang glider, that California fool killer, owes its parawing to NASA research on returning payloads to Earth. And there's hazardous gas sensors, filtration devices for kidney dialysis, flame-resistant clothing for firemen, and the Hubble telescope. The Hubble's imaging problems turned out to be the same problems doctors had looking for tumors in mammograms. I mean, somebody you love is alive today, not because of a NASA success, but because of a NASA failure, a design flaw in the Hubble telescope. Also, first rule of tactics, military and diplomatic, hold the high ground. Doesn't get any higher than space. And space keeps the politically powerful busy and distracted with grand visionary projects. Otherwise, they'd be tempted to meddle in our personal affairs, you know? They might, who knows what they might do. They might start subjecting us to full body searches at airports, you know, or telling us which health insurance policies to buy. You don't know what it might be. You know? But the U.S. space program, it's short on machinery, it's muddled about goals, it's low in morale. When the space shuttle was retired, thousands of NASA employees and contractors lost their jobs. We have no way to get a man into space except by asking Vladimir Putin, Mother Russia, may I, you know? Constellation project was canceled. Augustine Commission looked at it and said it was hopelessly behind schedule, underfunded, and over budget, and boy, I'm glad the Augustine Commission didn't look at me, you know? SLS won't be ready for years and years. I mean, where the SLS will go is, as it were, up in the air. I mean, lunar orbit, asteroid, Lagrange point. I had to look that one up, Lagrange point. That's a place between two gravitational bodies where an object is held stationary in perfect equilibrium. What if Jack Kennedy had declared we were going to put a man on a Lagrange point by the end of the decade, you know? Whole nation would have been inspired to go watch ballet in a suburb of Chicago or something. I don't know, you know? Surprising thing, when you look at it, about the space policies of President Obama, of Mitt Romney, of Newt Gingrich, and to the extent that they had any of Rick Santorum and Ron Paul, is actually how much alike they are. You know, Ron Paul said space isn't in the Constitution. Neither is Texas, because Spain got there first, you know? In fact, President Obama's space policy isn't actually much different than President George W. Bush's. There was always going to be a long wait between the end of the shuttle and the beginning of something new. Both presidents were stingy with cash and vague with objectives, although George W. Bush's vagueness was a little more stirring, you know. But I mean, in one way, space policies, this sameness goes back decades. NASA's budget peaked in 1966 at $32 billion in today's dollars, which was, at the time, 4.4% of the federal budget. I mean, funding has essentially been flat since George H.W. Bush took office. And it is, at this time, it is less than 1/2% of the federal budget. And you know, despite the grief that Newt got for a supposed cost of his Moon Homestead Act, or whatever that was, I mean, even Gingrich didn't propose spending more on space. And all of the presidential candidates expect the private sector to be buying a stairway to heaven, you know? I mean, for example, President Obama, he's calling for buying government data from private satellites. And I got this vision in my head of Hillary, click on Google Maps, Assad's house, street view, you know? Not sure that's going to work. You know, I was talking to a very highly respected and extremely blunt engineer, a man who's got experience at the very highest levels of NASA management and who's got a string of degrees as long as a shuttle launch smoke trail. And this engineer said to me, he said, "Our government needs to be in space. I do not see another tool large enough to accomplish this task." He said, "I look at U.S. space leadership as job one for all space policy. And it's not the military or the tech benefits and all of that. It's that people look up to the United States. But if those people keep looking up for long, there isn't going to be any United States to be seen among the stars." Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes tonight's Corporate Partnership Dinner, co-sponsored by Northrop Grumman. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you and good night.